Okay, so hello and thank you for watching this. Um, this is Felix the Fnatic Part 1, a Fnatic and LCS vlog for Paleo Gaming, brought to you as always by our very lovely sponsor, the Cherp app. And also a big shout out to our homies over at the LOL History app. Okay, so Fnatic is playing in the semifinals, and when this video is released, that will be tomorrow. So, cutting it a little close here, but I have had a lot to do with Paleo stuff. For example, the 24-hour stream of Dark Souls 3 is just in a matter of days, so a lot of stuff is being done around that right now. But let's talk a little bit about my beloved Fnatic and their League of Legends team, who have had quite a rough split. Um, Everybody knows that. No one would disagree when you say that Fnatic has been struggling as a team. But things are looking up. Okay, so to start off, maybe we should just do like a quick summary of how the split has been looking. Um, very, very tough start. Not start actually. Rough split all over. With its a few like bright points, but the thing that I feel they've struggled with the most is, well, synergy and communication is the thing that they talk about themselves when they talk about what they need to work on, what they need to improve. Um, but if we like pin it down to something that we actually see in game, I feel like the biggest thing that has been struggling due to these issues of synergy and communication, I feel, is the usage of teleports. Fnatic has not been able to use teleports well themselves during the split, and they've often been caught out by enemy teleports, which has been a big problem. Of course, they've lost team fights due to not knowing when and where teleports can come in. Spirit has given up a few first bloods by actually having a top laner teleport into a mid lane ward when he's there to gank. Um, so yeah, enemies have been able to catch Fnatic through teleports quite a lot, and Fnatic has not been able to set up for TP plays properly. And when they are going for TP plays, they're often mistimed. Either Gamsu comes in too early and goes in 1v5 and dies, and then leaves the rest of his team to play the team fight 4v5, and then they lose, or the teleport comes in too late, and the start of the fight is a 4v5 at best, and yeah, the fight is usually lost in the beginning before Gamsu even can come in and even out the numbers. So that has been a big problem. Also, a problem has been that Fnatic hasn't really played a team style that fits with Spirit's jungling. I feel it feels like Spirit has been jungling on champions that he likes, like the Nidalee, but the play style from the team has not fit with his very aggressive style. So either he's not going ahead like he should be if he wants to play a real carry champion and like play some more passive game on a champion that shouldn't be playing as such, or he tries to play aggressive but ends up being caught out for it because Fnatic as a team is not playing towards that playstyle. I mean, if Jankos is the king of first blood for securing a lot of first blood, I feel like Spirit has throughout this split at least been the prince of first bloods. But in regards to giving it up, I mean, he has died a lot of times in Fnatic games. He's usually the first to die when being caught out when trying to make an aggressive play. And this is something that we've seen quite consistently throughout the split, these problems. And one big shining bright light in the split was IEM Katowice, where Spirit and Gamzu actually played really well. Fnatic started playing around Spirit being really aggressive, and they looked a lot better in team fights, which speaks for a better communication within the team. And Gamsu was looking a lot better. I feel like Gamsu and Spirit in IM Katowice was like probably top three on their position in that tournament. So, and that's the thing. I mean, if we look like at these players, Gamsu's stats are not that great. I saw, for example, on Twitter, somebody made this big stat for stat comparison between Gamsu and Kikis, where like Kikis is better on like every statistic, and personally, I don't really think that Kikis is a better top laner than Gamsu, but it's really hard to see how good or bad Gamsu is as an individual player, considering the problems that Fnatic have. Because if your problems are most clearly manifested in the way you use teleport plays, then who's going to look the worst as a result of that? The guy using the teleport, which is Gamsu. It's only just recently that Fnatic have really started using double TP. They did it a few times throughout the split. They put Febiven on Lissandra and played double TPs, and that have actually looked good before, and it looked really good in the quarterfinals. But more often than not, Fnatic has been running with one teleport on Gamsu, and considering that that's where they struggle, Gamsu is the one who's going to look the worst. So I think his stats are more representative of like Fnatic's problems as a team than his individual problems right now. So and when Fnatic do work well, Gamsu looks really well as well. So I think it's clear that whether or not Gamsu works out depends a lot on whether Fnatic can work well together as a unit. I feel like he suffers more than, for example, Febiven. If the team struggles, Febiven plays in a position and has a role within the team that allows him to still look fairly good as an individual player, whereas Gamsu is quite dependent on the unit working in order for him to get his game going. So it'll be interesting to see if Fnatic can keep looking good, how good Gamsu really is in European standards. So, like, and the quarterfinal looked really, really good as well. I think in going in to the quarterfinals, yes, Vitality was definitely favorites. The number 3 seed against Fnatic, the number 6 seed, and considering how they played this split, it's a deserved spot for them to be the lowest seeded playoff team. But so in that regard, them winning is quite an upset. But if we just isolate that series and take away everything else, Fnatic looked like the way stronger team. If you would guess which team was the number 3 seed and which team was the number 6 seed by just looking at that series, I don't think anybody would guess that Vitality was the number 3 seed, because Fnatic had that game in a little box. And yeah, they gave up one game, sure, but the wins that they got looked really, really, really smooth, really nice. So I was very happy to see that. And one thing that I was very glad to hear is that both Reckless and Febiven in interviews after the series talked about how double TPs is the way to play right now. And considering how I've felt like their teleport plays have been something they've struggled with throughout the split, it's really, really calming to hear them say that this is how we should play right now, and that they're also executing that strategy really, really well. So, yeah, I mean, a few missteps, um, like playing a little bit over aggressive when they don't have all the cooldowns they need to make a play with these with the compositions that they pick. But I mean, yeah, it's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than it's been looking for the entire split so far. So I'm feeling really good about Fnatic. And coming up to the semifinal, it's going to be really interesting to see them match up against the G2, because even though G2 has like they won the regular split, right? That's why the number 6 seed gets to face them. But I actually feel better getting G2 in the semifinals than H2K, because I believe that H2K is the stronger team overall, especially over the course of a best of 5, because G2, they have this really aggressive, like fighting oriented playstyle, but they also have a tendency to really overextend. And I think H2K will make the smarter choices over the course of 5 games, and they have a lot more experienced players, uh, which matters a lot, especially in playoffs. We talk a lot about experience, or I usually talk a lot about experience, and I talked before this split about how I think Origin will be really, really strong this split because of all their experienced players and the fact that the roster is stuck together so far. They struggled as well, but towards the end of the split, things have been looking up, and they looked really, really good in the quarterfinal as well. And they didn't even play Expeke, so I believe they have a. They still have an extra gear to put in, and now that we get into playoffs, this experience is really going to come into play. So I think that Origin has a much harder matchup in the semifinals than Fnatic do. Okay, so the mid lane matchup in Fnatic versus G2 is definitely the one to watch. Fnatic Febivin versus Perks in G2 is going to be very exciting to watch. I think that Febivin is, like, individually probably the best mid laner in Europe, but Perks has been looking extraordinarily good this split. Consistently, I'd say he's been looking really, really good, and I'm not surprised that a lot of people are calling him the MVP of this split. So that will be an exciting lane matchup to watch, and the jungle matchup will also be very interesting because Spirit, we know he's a good individual player, but he's been looking up and down. He looked really good in the quarterfinals. His Kindred in the quarterfinal was superb. Very good deep warding and invading, really, really making it hard for Vitality to respond to any moves, because Spirit was so on top of that jungle game on that Kindred. But Trick, on the other hand, on G2, he's been looking astonishing this split. Trick has been a great player in the jungle. I'd say probably the best jungler, if we just look at performances, the best jungler this split. Jankos has also been looking really good, and maybe he's, like, individually a better player if we just compare them, like, in individual skill and mechanics. But yeah, if we just look at performances this split, I think that Trick is probably outshining everyone else in the EU LCS right now. So that will be an interesting matchup as well. In the top lane, like I said, I think Gamsu is a better player, but also very dependent on whether Fnatic gets their stuff going, like if they can play the way they want and execute their strategies as intended. But considering the tank meta right now, I think it's actually fitting Kikis that he's not, like, only put in a skill matchup, like 1v1, who can outplay the other one. So yeah, if there is a slight advantage in the top lane, I don't know if it's going to matter all that much. I think the impact of the top laners are going to depend on, like, what team can come up stronger as a unit. And if we look at the bottom lane, I think that Fnatic has the better bottom lane. Like, yeah, Cly is not a complete LCS player yet. He's a player with a lot of potential to grow, but he looked really good. I think both in IM Katowice overall, he looked really good, and in the quarterfinals, he impressed me. He looked really strong, and both in the quarterfinal series against Vitality and in IM Katowice, he really showed a lot of the potential that the Fnatic management probably saw in him when they decided to go with him as the replacement for Noxiac. And Reckless is great. Reckless is a superb ADC. So I think just looking lane for lane, and we're going to have a very even mid lane, a very even jungle. Top lane is going to depend on the team play more than the individual matchup. And bottom lane I give to Fnatic. But overall, G2 have been looking stronger. So this is very hard to predict, actually, how it's going to go. I hope that Fnatic will win, since I'm a big fan. But let's face it, considering that it's the number 6 seed against the number 1 seed, obviously G2 are going to be the favorites going into this series. But if we just look at how Fnatic played in the quarterfinals, I don't think it's that big of a stretch to say that they have a shot against G2. I don't think that G2, if they win, I don't think it's going to be a 3-0 sweep. Very possible that this will be a 5-game series, actually, and hopefully Fnatic will come out on top. If they don't, we're going to have to look forward to a fight for the 3rd place against the loser in the H2K Origin matchup, and that is going to be very interesting as well. If that does happen, we're fighting for championship points, circuit points for this year's qualification to Worlds. So let's say hypothetically that becomes a Fnatic versus Origin matchup for thirds. That is 2 major players fighting for an edge in the circuit points to next split's Worlds qualification. So considering how strong Europe has been, how competitive this league has become, I think the circuit point aspect of the competition is going to be a lot more interesting than it was last split, because as I see it, we've got 5 super strong teams in Europe right now, in H2K, in G2, in Vitality, in Origin, and Fnatic, especially considering that I think that Origin and Fnatic are going to pick things up come summer when these teams have played more together, and we've seen an upwards trajectory already. I mean, if we look at IM Katowice for Fnatic, if we look at the playoffs so far, the quarterfinal for Fnatic, things are going uphill. If we look on Origin, they didn't look really good in IM Katowice, but after IM Katowice, the end of the split looked really good for them, and their quarterfinals looked really good as well. So both of these teams are already showing improvement. I think come summer, both of these teams are going to be really strong, much better than they've been this split. And so yeah, I think we have 5 teams who are really will be competing for qualifications to Worlds. So the circuit points are really going to matter, because going into the gauntlet for a Worlds qualification is going to be a much more rough scenario than it was this last split, where Origin pretty much, yeah, could just ease back and grab it. But we'll talk more about that if game for thirds is what we'll be looking at for Fnatic. Who knows? Maybe it will be G2 and H2Ks fighting for thirds. That would be an upset, right? But yeah, we'll have to see. So I'm going to keep doing some Phoelix the Fnatic vlogs for the rest of the split, the remainder, and maybe just a short summary of it all after the split is over, and then make this a really regular thing come the summer split. But for now, I'm just really excited to look at the semifinal. Like I said, an extraordinarily hard series to predict, because, yeah, I'm actually not sure how these teams stack up against each other, because it feels like the overall performance of the split is not really that vital of a factor to weigh in. I mean, yes, G2 won a lot more games throughout the split, but this is right here, right now, and this is a best of five instead of best of ones. So a lot of different factors weigh in when you're going to like predict which team is the stronger right now, and we don't know how big of a difference G2 and Vitality is in this scenario, so I really don't know how well Fnatic's performance against Vitality uh, works as an indication of how good they are in this matchup. And I don't know how strong G2 are, considering this matchup as well, because they won a lot of best of ones throughout the split, but this is a Fnatic that looks a lot stronger than they did throughout most of the split, and this is a best of five and not best of one. And we've not seen G2 play for a while. Like, that is also okay. They get to prepare a lot. Like, that's good, but Fnatic, they've been playing high intensity, high pressure games. They're warmed up um, in another way than G2 are. So, yeah, a lot of question marks will be resolved tomorrow when these two teams face each other, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to making more videos as well. I know the video looks really shitty right now. There is a better camera incoming. I'll get that set up as soon as possible. But until then, I'm going to look like this. So, yeah. Really looking forward to this. Get on the Cherp app and chat and chirp with me for the EU LCS and NA LCS playoffs. Check out paleogaming.com, and don't forget that the 12th of April is the 24-hour live stream of Dark Souls 3 on twitch.tv slash Paleo Gaming. So do check that out. Let's go Fnatic. Much love to the Chirp app. Much love to the LOL History app. And goodbye.